Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another episode of Back to My Garden. And today we have a special guest on the west coast of California. Andy loves the family aspect of gardening and tomatoes, delicious, ripe heirloom tomatoes. He gardens in West Sacramento, California, with more than 2 decades in the soil. And now he has a generation of his own joining him. We're going to be talking a lot about family gardening. So I want to welcome to the show, Andy Domek. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. This is a really quite an honor for me to be on the podcast. I've been gardening since before I could walk. I think my dad and mom probably carried me around their gardens when I was a little kid. There's pictures of my sister, actually. I love these pictures of her in a diaper just running through this giant community garden that my dad used to manage. And it's just really inspiring to see. And I've tried to garden with my own kids and give them kind of the same wonderful food that my parents gave to me. It's just been an absolutely wonderful experience.
Excellent. Andy and I are going to relax and talk about gardening for the next 25 minutes. And if you're listening, we'll put all the links and resources that we share up on the blog at BackToMyGarden. Make sure you connect with Andy on social media on Twitter at Andy Domek. That's ANDY DOMEK. You're on Instagram too, aren't you, Andy?
I am. Yeah, I am. I'm at West Sac Urban Gardener. And admittedly, the urban is a bit of a stretch now that I really think about it, but it sounded cooler than West Sac Gardener. So West Sac Urban Gardener is what we've got. It's at WestSacUrbanGardener. And I know that's kind of long, but I think people can find it.
Good. I'll have a link for that too. People
Excellent.
Love the photos of gardening. Hey, maybe we'll start there. What's your garden? Sure. What's your garden like today?
Today, well, I'm going to go out to my window and I'll look out. It's still relatively early for me, but the sun's just coming out. And if you look out my window, you'll see 2 what I like to call contraptions. One of them reminds me of my wife dubbed it the Imperial Walker from Star Wars. Because it's giant, probably about 7 feet tall, and I built them as kind of a tomato fence contraption thing. And I tied it all together with twine. The idea was to have the tomatoes climb as high as they could climb last summer, and it worked pretty well. And then I realized after it was built that taking it down was going to be rather problematic. So I ended up planting my winter garden into it. The other contraption is kind of like a long house is what it looks like, and it's a bit shorter. And I was going to try to make a living roof with my tomatoes last summer, but that didn't really work either. But regardless, I was able to tie the tomatoes on, and it was a lot of fun. Right now, plant-wise, I have got 2 kinds of peas. I've got shelling peas, and I have snow peas. My dad and I used to get into debates about which pea is better. And I always like the shelling peas, and my wife likes the shelling peas. But he always loves snow peas. So I planted a bunch of snow peas just in honor of my dad. And we have favas. I absolutely love fava beans. They're kind of a pain to cook with because you have to shell them twice, but that's okay. I really enjoy them. And I've got a carrot patch that so far I have managed to grow 1 carrot. I'm not quite as successful in the winter as I am in summer gardening. And what else do I have out there? I have some kale, I have some chard, some onions growing, and a number of fruit trees, but those obviously aren't producing a heck of a lot. I had some citrus trees that I've had a grand total of 1 orange from, and I've had 1 clementine from citrus. So success is not really my forte come winter, but I sure do love doing it.
I'm going to qualify this for the listeners, Andy, because this will be like a time capsule. So understand, this is the 3rd week of January, and a record snowfall just kind of hammered the northeast of North America. and here Andy is with peas and carrots and beans.
That's very true. Although I have to admit, there aren't any carrots out there. They are not exactly rearing their heads yet. Let's put it that way. I haven't had a heck of a lot of success with carrots in the past, but it's okay. It's all fun.
I'd made a couple of questions to ask you specific around your weather last summer. I know you guys had a pretty brutal drought in parts of California. What was it like where you are?
We were in a pretty big drought, and we let our lawns go. We just turned off any sprinkler action there. But yeah, it was extraordinarily dry. Our reservoirs were near record lows, if not record lows, and we just got virtually no rain the winter before. Unfortunately, this summer's actually started gearing up to be a summer just like that. But we all did our part to conserve. All of my plants are on drip irrigation. Most of my plants are on drip irrigation, so we really get. We used as little as possible. But it was extraordinarily dry last summer.
I'm trying to conceptualize, because May, June, July, all my vegetables are in the garden. But for you guys, summer gardening is maybe not your most productive time, right?
No, actually, summer is it's very much my most productive time. But it's not so much May, it's more late June, July, August, even into September. And our weather is so mild that I was harvesting tomatoes in mid-October, and I had one very hardy plant, a Sungold plant, cherry tomato plant. I was harvesting, I think, into November even of this year. So we have it's very conducive to tomatoes around the Sacramento area.
Wow. I'm going to write that one down. So the Sungold you were eating into November.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it was great. I mean, that's one of most of the tomatoes I grow are heirlooms, but I have Sungolds are sort of the candy. You go out there and you intend to just go water or something and pull some weeds, and you end up eating at least a couple of handfuls of Sungold every time you go out.
Nice.
Wonderful tomato.
Do you have a favorite seed company that you buy your heirlooms from?
Yeah, I do. It's Sustainable Seed Company, and I think they're out of Petaluma, California. I think it's what's their website? I think it's Sustainable Seed. I can send you the link after the program today if you'd like. It's a wonderful company. I've never had bad luck, or maybe I'll say that positively. I've always had good luck with their stuff, and they're wonderful seeds. And I actually don't get my Sungold there. Usually my dad would start them for me. This year I've had to, unfortunately, he's been very sick in the hospital, so I'm going to be starting those, and I got them from another company. I can't remember exactly which one, but all but the Sungolds are coming from Sustainable Seed.
No, we'll send your dad good thoughts. You'll have to smuggle him in some ripe tomatoes.
Yeah, sure. That'd be really nice if I could get him to eat. He's been pretty sick. So this is, gardening for me it's even more poignant now because I'm filled with just all the wonderful memories of gardening with him and the traditions that he's passed on to me and my siblings. So it's even more special now for me now that he's been so ill.
And now you're passing those on to your family, right?
Yeah, I'm sure trying. That's one of the. I love basically everything there is about gardening, and with my kids, it's funny because sometimes they're really gung ho about it, and they're kids. Other times, not so much. My littlest, he's only about 17 months old, so I would wear him in a baby carrier out there when I would go work in the garden a lot of the time, and my older one is 4.5, so she's been gardening with me since she's been born. I would wear her at first, and then when she'd start to toddle around, I'd let her help. My favorite story is when I called it, I Tom Sawyered her into pulling weeds for a little bit. I wouldn't let her. She asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm just pulling weeds, but you're not old enough yet. Sorry, kid. And she said, let me help. And I went, no, I don't think you're old enough. And eventually I convinced her. I said, well, okay. All right, I'll let you pull a couple of weeds, but only a few. And then I had her out there for about 20 minutes pulling weeds before she realized she was pulling weeds. That was one of my all-time favorite garden memories with my little monkeys.
Nice. The old reverse psychology, and it worked.
It worked. It only worked once, though, so next summer it's not going to work at all. But that's okay.
I can just picture you out there in a baby sling with a papoose doing a little weeding.
I think it was a Bjorn, actually, but it worked just fine.
Yeah, baby Bjorns. Yeah, I know those.
Those are not as great. We have a lot of fun out there. And my another favorite little story of mine, my kiddos, my older ones in preschool, and they were studying growing, and of course she knew everything there was to know about seeds growing, but they all got to take home a seed. And she told their teacher, "Oh, don't worry about the seed. Daddy and I are gardeners." And that just melted my heart for her. And the actual funny part of the story, though, is the seed. I couldn't get the stupid thing to grow. I don't even know what they planted, but the teacher said, "Well, just keep it moist, keep it on a sill." And of course, we have a cat, so it didn't last very long on a windowsill, so we had to put it outside. And the dang thing never grew, and she was really just getting distraught about it. So eventually what I did is I went and I was buying some plants to put in our, I call it a little butterfly garden in the back in my clay soil. So it's more of an attempted butterfly garden. It's never actually really taken off. But I went and got a little flower, and I switched out the soil in the little cup the seed was supposed to grow in. So when she wandered out, she went, Daddy, it's growing. We did it. We grew it. I went, "Oh, what do you know? Hey, that's great, kid."
Nice.
So she was able to have a little bit of success of her own.
Outstanding.
It was fun.
You had mentioned your butterfly garden. What are you attempting to grow in it?
I have some salvias in there. I've got a number of different lavenders. And, I shouldn't say I'm totally unsuccessful, because I have salvias they grow and spread. I think I have it's called a bottle brush plant. And a lot of these things are fairly successful the first year, but I have very terrible drainage in that area, so I've managed to kill off a lot of different plants that I've attempted to start over there. But it's just sort of an attempt to use what I have. I have fairly bad clay soil in a lot of areas, so I figured I couldn't grow veggies really easily there. So I'll just attempt to do some flowers and bring some butterflies and bees. It works some of the time, but most of the time not so much.
We just finished 2014. I wanted to ask you, what grew really well for you last season, and was there anything that frustrated you or refused to participate?
Let's see. I don't think I had. I've been doing it a long enough time now that I, generally speaking, don't plan, at least in the summer, things that aren't going to grow real well for me. Things that grew really well, there's a variety of tomato called Eva's Purple Ball, or Eva Purple Ball, and I get that again from Sustainable Seed, and you can almost use it like you would like a paste tomato or something. Not because it tastes anything like a paste tomato, but it's just so prolific, and it grows all over the place, and it just produces, sets of 4 and 5 at a time, and they're the size of your fist. Just wonderful tomatoes, absolutely wonderful. That was probably the biggest thing that just grew like crazy. I had some chili peppers. I had some, what are they called? Poblanos, I think they were. And those kind of took off. Got them from the same place. So every once in a while I'll get a attack of wilt or something. But for the most part, I've had a pretty successful run of tomatoes, as long as I remember to amend the soil. I remember one year when my daughter was first born, being a new dad, I managed to forget a great deal of things that I was supposed to do, both in the house, in the garden. I once attempted to go to the dentist without putting on pants, but those are the things you do as a new dad. And I forgot to amend the soil, so I couldn't figure out why tomatoes were so piddly that year. And that was why. I was, sleep deprived, that sort of thing.
I understand.
So is life, right?
I'll put a link up. That's Eva Purple Ball, EVA?
Eva Purple Ball, yeah.
Nice. That's a new one on me. That's great.
Yeah, they grow really well in my zone. I think I'm 9B. Like I always have to look it up.
You experimented with this concept, the living roof experiment.
Uh-huh.
Were you kind of growing indeterminates, like just the long viney ones?
Yeah, I was growing all indeterminates in that individual bit of a plot. And you can see, anybody's interested can look on my Instagram where I kind of documented my attempts. And I think it would have worked just fine if I had built my long house a little bit higher. I had the long part right, just not the height. So if it was a little bit higher, it actually might have worked. So next summer I might try to lift the thing up a bit. I've left it intact because it's just too much work to take it down. But the nice thing is with peas can kind of grow up that too. And right now it's not really a living roof. It's more of a living half a wall, I guess you could say. That's what the peas are.
It's fascinating though, because a lot of listeners have very limited space. They live in cities. So going vertical is really opens up new horizons for them.
Oh yeah. When I used to have a community garden plot in Sacramento before we bought our home that actually had room where I could put in a couple of raised beds. And I went vertical with melons. I went vertical with certainly tomatoes. The indeterminates I planted relatively close than I should have, and I just used a heck of a lot of compost to make up for the fact that the roots weren't getting a lot of water, and I just staked them and let them climb. I went vertical with and I still do this. Actually, I run cucumbers up the side of my fence. I nailed some nails into the side of the fence and used twine and made a little trellis. And so I had cucumbers last summer just growing all over the side of my fence. And it really does save you a lot of space, because cucumbers can take up a heck of a lot of space on the ground and in a bed of that sort of thing. But if you plant them along your fence and make a little improvised trellis, you can save yourself a lot of room.
Outstanding.
At least I did.
That's good. That's good tips.
Yeah. Oh, and beans, my all-time, one of the things I don't like to eat them as much. They're more fun for me to grow, but other people like to eat them, so that's okay. I grow a bunch of different kinds of beans my dad used to call it a bean teepee. When he would get all of these really tall and bendy sticks, and I've never been able to replicate the height he got. At one point, I think it was 8 or 9 feet tall, and he made a circle with these really tall and bendable sticks and tied the top together with twine and then planted all different kinds of bean seeds or seedlings along the bottom of it. They would just grow right up it and made a really cool for the kids. And so we have this great picture of my older sister, me, and my younger brother leaning our heads out. And it's a really cute picture. And I remember just really enjoying sitting in the shade and playing and hiding from my brother and all the other people at the big community garden where he managed. And I've done that in my yard. We have a little play area for the kids, and I've commandeered one of the swing areas, and I lean sticks against it. And beans will grow up anything. So you can grow vertical on those pole beans and have them converge at the top, and it makes a little hideout for the kids or adults if you're into hiding out in your backyard, which I guess I am. I sound weird, don't I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, very cool. Now, speaking of kids, I know you've been working on a special gardening book designed to help kids get excited about gardening.
Yeah, I have. I've written a little, it's basically a love letter to gardening and my kids. I called it Our Garden, and that's how I've always referred to the garden in the backyard with my family, and it's how my family referred to their garden. It's always just our garden. And it's just a little story of a father and child spending time together, building a garden together, eating a meal, fending off raccoons and crows as best you can, but as many gardeners know, that's not always possible. So you sort of have to learn to live in peace with them.
Nice.
And it was just a joy to write. And a good friend of mine, he actually won an Emmy for his illustration, his animation. Collaborated on it. He illustrated it for me, and we tell the story as much through visuals as we do through words. And it was just a lot of fun. So we're looking for an agent or a publisher. So if anybody's listening and interested in a little children's picture book, by all means contact me, because I would love to publish it.
Awesome. So my friends at Timber Press in Cool Springs, and if you have someone connected in the children's or gardening book arena, reach out to Andy on Twitter at Andy Domek.
You got it.
I just glanced at the clock and our time is whipping by, Andy. And now's the time in the show where we play a game called 5 Quick Questions.
Sure.
This is your chance to share your wisdom and experience with rookie novice gardeners.
Excellent.
Question number 1. What is the funniest or biggest mistake that you've ever made in the garden that you're willing to admit to in public?
Well, out of the many mistakes I've made, I've made pretty much all of them. The other one was last summer I discovered this philosophy called double digging, where you dig down a couple of shovelfuls, throw out your dirt, and then you dig even further. And I did that with one of my beds, had great success, and I moved to the other bed, and I dug down a couple of shovelfuls, moved all the dirt, got nice and hot and sweaty, and was very, very productive. And then dug down even further, and I heard a thunk. And I thought about it. I don't remember planting. I don't remember there being anything solid enough to thunk. And I thunked again, and it started filling up with water. And of course, I'd cut my own drip irrigation line, and it was the pipe, so I had to go and attempt to fix that. So that was pretty impressive, actually. That was one of my more impressive mistakes out of the many that I've made.
Well, we like to share these, not to embarrass you, just to give advice to the rookies. Be careful where you're digging.
Always. Make sure you remember where you put your drip irrigation line, just put it that way.
I used to dig in bare feet until I nearly lost a toe, and then I learned always wear proper footwear.
I've done that, or I've stepped in something that hasn't quite finished composting. That has not been fun.
Question 2. If you were only allowed to grow one thing next year, what would you have to grow?
I would grow a Cherokee purple tomato. In my opinion, you can't get a finer eating tomato than a Cherokee purple. And I haven't always had the greatest luck in terms of getting them to grow super productively, but the ones that I have managed to grow have just been the most wonderful tastes I've ever put in my mouth.
Nice.
So I think I'd do that.
I'll have a link up for Cherokee Purple. Those are fun tomatoes.
They're great. Really, really great stuff.
Speaking of links, question 3. Do you have any favorite websites or gardening resource sites that you like to share?
Yeah. I'm a writery kind of a guy, so the ones that I follow tend to be narrative based. And a guy that I really enjoy is his name's Bill Bird, and he's a colleague of mine. He works in the legislature as well, and he runs a site called Sacramento Vegetable Gardening. And he is also a guy that has made all the mistakes there are to make, and he perseveres. And his garden's absolutely amazing. He has a really neat blog, and he's converted the entirety of his yard pretty much into raised beds, orchard areas, and he does a lot with the space he has. So his blog is just wonderful. It's really a lot of fun to read.
Awesome.
And I think everybody would enjoy it. The other one isn't a gardening site per se. It's partly a gardening site. It's actually a hunting and foraging site, and it's called Hunter Angler Gardener Cook. And it's a guy by the name of Hank Shaw. He just won a James Beard Award for his blog. And I'm not a hunter or an angler, but I do think of myself a little bit as a forager in the sense that I go and I'll find elderberries, wild blackberries, that sort of thing. But the gardening stuff really, and I enjoy reading the other stuff too because I'm always looking for a good recipe. But he likes to grow interesting things, and he's the one that reading his account of growing favas and to grow favas, and they've become my absolute favorite springtime crop. So check his website out; it's really good. You won't be disappointed in that. I think it's called Honest Food something or other. You can use the Google machine and find that.
Okay, good. Outstanding. See, this is where the wisdom gets shared. You could search all day and never find those sites until you get told about them. That's great.
great.
Question 4. Do you have a favorite gardening book?
Yeah, just the Sunset Gardening book. It's a wonderful resource, I think. It has all the answers. If you look at it, you get inspired because they have really cool pictorial depictions of people's gardens, as well as just information on pretty much every plant out there. So I've always turned to that as a resource, as well as when I make a mistake, I Google something. But I guess that's not really a book. I'm trying to figure out how to fix whatever I managed to screw up. That's sort of my philosophy in gardening. I call myself a screw up and learn gardener. I screw up, and then hopefully I learn from it.
Nice.
So anyway, that's my favorite book. Sunset Gardening book.
Yep. I'll put a link up for sure on that one.
Sure.
Question number 5 is a fun one. There's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
Is there anything that you've never personally grown that you would love to experiment with?
Yeah. I would love to experiment someday with really hot peppers, like ghost peppers. I think that'd be kind of a fun thing to do. The reason I haven't done that is because I have kids, and I don't want them going out of the yard and, hey, Daddy, what's this? And shoving it in their mouth before I tell them what it is. So I have grown some hot peppers, but nothing like the ones that'll make you cry tears of blood or anything like that.
Nice.
I'd really love to experiment with things like that.
Yeah, that'll be your retirement food when the kids leave the nest. You can grow.
Exactly. I love spicy food, so it's fun to grow jalapenos and poblanas and stuff. But we'll leave the real spicy stuff until my kids won't need therapy for years.
Yeah, very good. They're not kid friendly, that's for sure.
No.
Well, good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, dear listeners, I hope you took a ton of notes. I'll have about I got half a page of notes myself. I'll put them up on the blog at BackToMyGarden.
Cool.
Make sure you follow Andy on Twitter at Andy Domek and on Instagram at West Sac Urban Gardener. I got that right? Gardener?
Yeah, that's totally right. You got it.
Reach out, share photos. If you have any contacts in the publishing world, reach out to Andy with his new book project. Andy, we're nearly out of time. You've been an awesome guest.
Sure. Oh, thanks.
I want to give you the last word to the listeners. We have people listening now in 60 countries around the world.
Wow.
A lot of urban, a lot of patio, container gardeners, all kinds of gardeners, garden designers. Can you leave us with either a note of encouragement or a pearl of wisdom? Sure. My favorite pearl of wisdom comes from my dad, and that's just don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Keep trying. And when you screw up, learn from it. That's about it. Very good. When you screw up, learn from it. Andy, you've been tremendous. Thanks for being on the show. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.